The Universal Want by Doves. It is
Uh,
10 songs long, 47 minutes long, and this is really interesting because Doves have been around
for a
since the
long
aughts.
time.
Their first
And
album was Lost Souls in
Lost
2000.
Souls is the third best album of the 2000s. Third or fourth best album of the 2000s.
Jesus.
It's incredibly good. I remember listening to it too as a kid because my dad really liked Seesaw on Lost Souls, and like that was one of the very first songs. That and Aerodynamic by Daft Punk were the first two songs that like made me feel like you're floating in space for the very first time.
Yeah.
And Seesaw still does that to me. And like the entire album of Lost Souls is amazing. Last Broadcast, Some Cities. The last one was Kingdom of Rust in 2009. They've done like little things here or there, but like they really haven't done too much for a long time. But their music in the aughts was fantastic. One of the best alternative rock bands in that time period. Also because they were very different in their sound because they made some songs were really long and like kind of airy and space age at the time. So really before their time too. In
Yeah,
that regard.
they've been paired in the genre of space rock. Some call them like post Britpop.
Yeah, it's almost like combining alt rock with post rock. So it's like combine Radiohead with Sigur Rós and you get Doves.
Yeah.
Like that's a good explanation of them. So now you see why I like them so much. Anyways, so Universal Want, it starts off with Carousels, which is I think that was their first single that came out. They only had two singles for this album, and the album version of Carousels, it starts off slower than the actual single version. So like the first maybe 30 seconds of it or so is like a little build up to the song, and then it like morphs into this really nice drum beat. And that's one thing that's like throughout the album is the drums are fantastic throughout the entire album. Something that they've played with a little bit before in the couple of the previous albums, but not as much as they did in this one. And that's like the vocals are a little bit more prevalent in it because sometimes the vocals are a little bit more hidden within their songs, like especially in Lost Souls, like you can hear it's more spacing to some of it. You have a little more effects, but this one is just like no effects straight up, and you can really understand what he's saying. There's another thing with them is that sometimes I have to look up the lyrics, but this album you don't have to.
Yeah. It's a nice clean production that way. My sort of semi-hot take that isn't as hot as it's gonna come out saying is that this album sounds like it was taken out of Radiohead's 2000 to 2005's era, but it's not trying to be like a hard copy of that. It just is that because that's their era, that's their sound, that's what they're used to.
Yeah.
There's I'm gonna wait till the end to get to where I super have this opinion, but even in the beginning, you have like the sort of stuff you'd expect from Amnesiac, Hail to the Thief kind of Radiohead, where it's a little bit of guitar in the background. The drums are very non-traditional and doing a lot of different beats. There's some bass there, but it's ultimately just like trying to get the beat going to make the song do its thing and have its place and play out. It's very beautiful. I really enjoy that. That's not to say it's like
It's the uncle. It's the fine line of being Uncle Rocky. It is towing the line of because when I first heard Carousels, I'm like, okay, this is actually a good song. I wonder what else they're gonna do for it. And I forget what their second single was. It might have been Prisoners, which I actually really like in the album.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was Carousels and Prisoners. I heard Prisoners. I'm like, okay, please don't be Uncle Rocky. Let me see this song in the context album because I didn't like it as a single. In the album, I think it's actually very good because Cathedrals of the Mind felt like the low point of the album. The first four songs I thought were very good. They were toying with the idea of doing more of that space rocky theme that you did before, plus bringing in alternative and a little bit of indie and some electronica in them, which they haven't done before. But they didn't make anything cliche at all, which is thank Christ. But then Cathedral of the Mind, I didn't like the vocals too much. I really liked the production, but I thought the vocals were holding it back. And I'm like, okay, let me see how Prisoners fits into it. It was the transition of the end of that song into Prisoners. I'm like, oh shit, this is actually very, very good positioning of it. And that's when I started to really enjoy the album a little bit more.
It's a album that goes by quicker than it feels because it was 47 minutes.
It went by very quickly.
It's like it's 47 minutes, so you can round up to 50, but it definitely feels close to 40. My favorite song, actually, this is one of those albums where like I would nominate it for album enders of the year because the combination of Universal Want and Forest House. Let me start if I can with Universal Want. The song starts fairly slowly, kind of coming into it. But then once you get to the build up and kind of like crescendo in the middle of it, it does what I counted out to be almost like an 11th beat. Like it's fucking ridiculous. We're
It's
like,
and it's like it's so hard to do that without making it too mindfucky.
yeah. Like if you're just listening very casually as a listener, like this is music. There are beats. It's roughly like 1 2 1 2. But I was counting it in my car because I listened to it on my third try. And I'm like, wait, the measure changes entirely on the 11th beat. Not even the 12th, but like the 11th. That's very. I didn't even want to begin to get into music theory and like figure out how exactly that's working or where that's coming from. But it's amazing that they pulled it off. And as the song kind of continues going, as it builds up, it has this almost electric fun thing. Oh, not dance quite, but it's the way an alternative band would do electronic. And it's really tasteful and pretty. It has these nice keys behind it near the end to kind of play it out.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, this almost sounds like not Information Beck, but like right before that, like Odelay.
Okay.
With the
I mean, yeah, it has a little bit of hints of Information Beck too, but that era, I could see that. It's combining a lot of eras into one, but it's because
the era is mostly like it's taking its foundation is mid 2000s alt rock, but it's borrowing from more modern changes and permutations.
Because some of the guitar work reminded me of Kings of Leon, a Nashville band.
Yeah.
Some of it, a lot of it at the beginning reminded me a lot of Kings of Leon, which they're also making an album, I believe, this year. A band I do very much enjoy, and I thought the guitar work within there, I'm like, this sounds good. But anyways, moving on to Forest House, I love that as a closing track. I think it's like doing that perfect bridge of like slowing everything down, floating through like time and space, and doing it within it to where it's just, especially by the end, you have like just the hum of a guitar in the background. You have the acoustic guitar going on in general, and just like it's like a perfect smooth landing into the album. Yeah. It's very, very good as album enders. Good album overall. I really enjoyed it. I really didn't know what to expect with Doves. I'm not disappointed though at all. It wasn't quite what I expected. I thought that they were going. I was actually worried. I'm like, okay, maybe they're gonna just revert back and try to make some of their older work. But this is very, very good. Definitely one of my top alt rock albums of the year by far. And there's actually been a lot of good out this year. So
yeah, there have been a lot of good rock in a lot of different directions. There's where we talked about in the new school all this time on this podcast with indie. There's a lot of old school artists that we've reviewed, like Psychedelic Furs. The Flaming Lips had something that came out this week as well.
Fuck, that's right.
There's a lot of people are just like taking crack at it again. It's this new, kind of as we predicted, a renaissance in rock music because of the end of the 10s being kind of such a lull for that.
And speaking of that, well, first off, we'll go into Arbitrary Scale.
Yes.
This is you only need one box. They're all signed, and you have a guitar case where people are giving you money as well.
So this is like you're on tour and you have a merch table, but you're the starting band. You're not the headliner. You're the starting band.
You're touring with the 1975, but everybody's lining up for your merch because you're so good. And then you have twice the line that 1975 has at the merch bar, which I did see before IDK How, which is like, okay, interesting.
Twice the line, half the album. Look at that.